Hi everybody, I'm Hannah from Automatic Spelling, and today I want to talk about some different spelling programs that are on the market. Now you may probably be thinking, okay, well she's biased because she created her own spelling program, and you're not wrong. But I will try to be as non-biased as I can. I have several spelling programs that I really love. And before I started writing curriculum, I would have students come into my house and I'd get to know them, I'd evaluate them, talk to the families, and work on matching curriculum with families. And I have two criteria for that. The first one is the learning style of the student. And the second, which is just as important, is the temperament of the parent. Because there can be a perfect spelling program for a student, but if the parent doesn't like it, then, or doesn't understand why it works the way it does, then it's not really going to be an effective tool to teach spelling. So both of those things are important. A couple of things that I want to talk about. First is that I am not going to evaluate any programs that I would call traditional spelling programs. Traditional spelling programs I would define as a spelling program that has a list of spelling words that they give the students each week. The students practice them in various ways, and then at the end of the week they get a spelling test. It's probably the way that you learned spelling. It's the way I learned spelling, and I will tell you that that works for about 80% of people. But if you are watching this video, then my guess is that your student is not in that 80%. As a former classroom teacher, I can tell you that's about right. We use traditional spelling programs in all of the schools that I worked in, and about 80% of my students would pass the test and about 20% would fail. And the interesting thing about those numbers is what we know about dyslexia. About 20% of the population is dyslexic. Now, I'm not saying that every single student that is a poor speller is dyslexic, but it is the number one indicator of students with dyslexia. So they kind of go hand in hand. Because I'm talking about students that are weak spellers, the go-to approach for teaching spelling is Orton-Gillingham approach. They use things like phonograms and spelling rules, multisensory. They have a very specific order that they introduce new steps in, and things like that. Most people will tell you that if you have a child that's struggling in spelling, this is probably the approach you want to follow. Some of the programs that I'm going to talk about are not technically Orton-Gillingham, but I do know of many students with dyslexia that have done well in all of the programs that I'm going to talk about. So it's not the only way, but most people will say it's the best way. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about Spelling UC. So I actually use this program with my students, or my children. Well, they're my students too, right? My camera woman is my daughter, Ellie, today. She might chime in. Okay, and this is very different than a typical spelling program because it is based on copywork. So I'm going to go over some different things on each of these spelling programs. And I guess I should say, I'm going to try to be as non-biased as possible. I will review Automatic Spelling, and I'm going to use the same criteria for Automatic Spelling as I am for all of the others. So I will tell you strengths and weaknesses of Automatic Spelling, as well as Spelling UC and all of the other ones that I talk about. Okay, so let's just get started. Okay, cost for Spelling UC, it is $53 per level. Okay, there are 7 levels total. If you have purchased like they have a package with a teacher book, you can keep the teacher book and buy the student book separately if you have extra students. So there is a little bit of a less cost for a second student. And it is a program based on copy work. So students copy sentences every day, and then at the end of the week, they take a spelling test that you give them, which is the dictation of the sentences they've been practicing, and then they have to spell them from memory. Okay, what I like about that is that it puts words in context, and that's really important for students, because if you're learning just a list of spelling words, then they have no meaning outside of that spelling list. And so what you see a lot of times is students that can memorize a list of spelling words for the test, then they forget them. And when they go to write them, because they haven't practiced them in context, they don't do very well. So this kind of takes care of that problem, if that's a problem that your student is facing. The gimmick, I would say, is that it is a copy work program, which we've been talking about. Okay, so teacher intensity. This is very easy for teachers and parents to implement. It doesn't take very long to learn how to do this program. And honestly, when I used it, I would just hand the book to my daughter, and she would open to the page she was on, and she would do it all by herself. I did not have to help her at all, which is a really nice perk if it works for your student. Unfortunately, it didn't work for mine. And then the only thing that the parents really need to do on a regular basis is dictate the spelling test at the end of the week. So once a week, basically. They may need some help with identifying phonograms, so I will talk about that in a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty independent for your students, especially when you get into level C. Before that, there is some more dictation that's every day. Okay, learning curve, very easy. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to implement. I think most people will understand how to use this program. Okay, time spent each day, I would say about 15 or 20 minutes each day. And then Orton-Gillingham approach, no, this is not an Orton-Gillingham program because it's not really multisensory. I'll tell you, some people might argue with that, but I'll tell you what that is. It does not teach spelling rules. So in my mind, if it doesn't teach spelling rules, it's really not an Orton-Gillingham program. Okay. So phonograms, yes, every day the students highlight phonograms in different colors with different color pencils. So this is an old one that my son used. He was looking for GH and I think just GH and SH. And so he highlighted them in blue. Okay. So that's what they do every day. They go through and look for different phonograms. They do not call them phonograms. They call them consonant chunks and vowel chunks. And I don't really like their terminology, but it is phonograms, what they're doing. So yes, there are not very many spelling rules, hardly at all. I think they talked about silent E when it changes the vowel sound. So like hop, and then with an E it says hope. But that's about it. Their technology, there are some webinars for parents, so that's helpful. And I guess I should say a little bit more about the copy work. So in Jack and Jill, which is the second level, level B, they use nursery rhymes, and so they copy nursery rhymes, and then at the end of the week they have to write them from dictation. So you read, so you say Jack and Jill went up the hill, and they write Jack and Jill went up the hill. Okay. In Wild Tales, it is about animals and just facts about animals. So they write a paragraph basically about that. And then in the upper levels, some of them are Americana. So there's, you know, American history kind of things. Okay. So now that I've talked about that, the ideal student is a student who learns from copying. Okay. So if your student can copy a word and remember how it's spelled, or can copy a word every day for a week and then remember how it's spelled, then this program is probably a good fit for your student. Okay. The student that it will not work for is a student who does not learn well with copy work. Oh, and before I forget, also maybe not an American, because there's a lot of American programs, so, or, you know, American, like the American, a lot of American themes in the books. So if you're not American, then you might really not want to spend that much time on that. And also if you have a student that's colorblind, that would not work really well either, because colorblind students can't use the colored pencils. Ellie's making fun of me.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. She's okay. Because colorblind students cannot use colored pencils very well. So you would have to come up with some other system to highlight those words. So like you could box one set of vowel chunks or whatever, and then circle another set. Okay. Yeah, my camera woman is making fun of me. The other student that will not do well is a student who does not copy a word and then remember how it's spelled. And that is me, and also my daughter. So that's the reason that we abandoned this eventually, is because it didn't matter that she copied it over and over again. When the spelling was not in front of her anymore, it was out of her mind. She couldn't do it. I like to say this is a little bit like that autopilot sensation that you get when you're driving somewhere and you are going somewhere very familiar, and you kind of stop thinking about what you're doing, and then all of a sudden you sort of wake up and realize that you're 3 miles past where you thought you were going to be. That's how I copy things. I don't pay any attention to the spelling or to the phonograms. It doesn't matter if I color them or not. If it's in front of me, then great, I can copy it, but it doesn't help me retain the spelling. So if your student doesn't do that, then this is probably not the best program for them. So there's a really easy way to figure out if this program will work for you. All you need to do is go to their website and download their free sample. They give you an entire week of lessons. Give that to your student for the week. Have them copy their sentences or whatever. And then at the end of the week, give them the dictation sentences. And if they do well, then might be a program that you're interested in. It might be a good fit for your student. But if they don't do well, then you might need to keep looking at other programs. So again, I said I will be doing several different reviews of spelling programs. I'm trying to be as non-biased as it is possible for a curriculum writer to be, because I know that there is no perfect spelling program. There's no one spelling program that will work for every single student. So I like to kind of highlight that, tell you what is good and what is bad, and everything in between. So I just want to go over kind of and summarize what we have talked about in the video. So for Spelling UC, the cost is $53 per level, and there are 7 levels. It is a spelling program based on copy work. The gimmick is students copy nursery rhymes, animal facts, American stories, etc. to learn spelling and keep it in context. Okay, and then teacher intensity, I would say, is easy. Most students are able to work independently except for dictation. The learning curve is easy. Daily duration is from 15 to 20 minutes each day. Orton Gillingham, no, it is not an Orton Gillingham program. It is not really multi-sensory. They do use colored pencils, but I wouldn't call that, it's not kinesthetic with letter tiles and things like that. It does not teach many spelling rules, so I think that's really the kicker. It is not Orton Gillingham because it does not really teach spelling rules. Phonograms, they call them vowel chunks and consonant chunks instead of phonograms, but that's what they are. Students highlight those in different colors, so there is a lot of phonogram work in this program. In fact, sometimes more than others. or than other programs. Okay, spelling rules, hardly any at all. Multisensory, maybe there are colored pencils. So if that's your definition of multisensory, then yes, but it's not kinesthetic with letter tiles. Technology, there are webinars for parent training. The ideal student is a student who learns by copying. They will do really well. It is not good for students who are colorblind and not good for students who do not learn from copying. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. Next time, spell to write and read. And that's all I have for you today, guys. I'll talk to you next time.